Hello everyone, I'm Lacey Maloney and this is...
Hi everyone, it's Ron.
You have to look up here.
Oh.
This is our third video in our How to Keto A to Z video series. In the first video, I went over an introduction, how to get into ketosis. In the second video, I shared our pantry items and refrigerator items so that you can see exactly what we eat on keto. And in this video, Ron and I are going to talk about how to do blood testing for your ketones and your glucose levels, as well as laboratory testing. So we're going to test ourselves and I'm going to show you what we use. All right, let's get started. So we're going to cover, as I said, the types of tests, what we use, signs that you're in ketosis if you're not testing. So you don't always have to do blood tests, but I do recommend it because as we found out on the last time that we did keto, Ron actually really wasn't quite in ketosis, and we only found that out after using the ketone meter. And then we're also going to talk about lab tests that you might want to order to check your cholesterol levels and to check for inflammation.
I'm pretty new to keto, and I'm really here for just moral support.
No, Ron is doing keto because he saw how much I liked keto and he decided to join in on it because I told him he didn't have to do it if he didn't want to, and never pushed him or pressured him or told him you had to do keto, did I?
No, I have my own reasons for doing keto.
You have to look up at the camera. All right, let's continue on. Okay, so types of testing. So there are urine test strips, and that tests for what is called beta-hydroxybutyrate. You don't need to know that word. But these urine strips are not accurate. Initially, you're going to have an overflow of this type of ketone, the beta-hydroxybutyrate, out of your kidneys and into your urine. But as you get into ketosis, or maybe if you're not into ketosis, it's not going to show up. Your kidneys stop producing the beta-hydroxybutyrate. You stop having an overflow of it. So they're really not accurate, although they're very cheap, so it seems very lucrative, but I wouldn't go that route. There's also a breathalyzer test that you can get, and that tests for actual acetone. That is another ketone byproduct. But you still might need a glucose meter to test your blood sugars. And it's also not testing for the actual amount of ketones that are in your blood. It's only testing for what is being expelled through your breath in the form of acetone, which also decreases the more you get into ketosis. Then we have the blood test. That is testing for acetoacetate. So there's three types of ketones: the beta-hydroxybutyrate, acetone, and acetoacetate. And again, you don't need to know those, but just be aware of them because you might see those words around and think, what the heck is that? So the blood tests are really the most reliable, and at the end of the day, it's the most cost effective. They have come down quite a bit in price. They used to be very expensive, about $2 per ketone test strip, because they were really only used for diabetics in ketoacidosis. So they were very rarely used, and there wasn't a big market for it like there is now. So the prices have come down, thankfully. So we use the Precision Extra meter. We get this off of Amazon, and I would recommend buying it in the bundle as I have shown in the handout. That's just our grumpy dog Basil, don't mind him.
He's on keto too, more or less.
So I would recommend buying them separately because it's going to save you about $20. They have a bundle on there that includes the meter, the strips, and the Lancet device, but it's more expensive rather than if you buy it separately. The actual lancing device that came with this unit, this one here, is a piece of junk. So I used the Lancet device that I already had previously. I already had a glucose meter just from my prior health endeavors and interest, and I wanted to test and see how foods affected my blood sugar. So this is the One Touch Delica. You can buy it separately for about $12 on Amazon, and I recommend you doing that because the other one is a piece of junk. So we use this one, and I'm going to show you how we use it and how to replace the lancing devices. First, let's get out our strips, and we're going to test our blood glucose and our blood ketones for you. I already have a Lancet in here, So let's start with Ron. Let's test you first.
I think that grown from basil was a carbohydrate craving.
Not my basil. He's a good boy. Okay. So I'm setting it to 6 because Ron's fingers are a little bit thicker than mine. 6 is a little bit deeper. And I'm just going to stab him with it.
This is the part she likes.
We're just going to let the blood come to it, his finger for a minute. And while I do that, I'm going to take off, this is the bluish colored strip. It's the glucose strip. I'm just going to insert the dark lines into the meter, and it's going to turn on all by itself. So it's turning on, and it's going to show me a little blood droplet. That means it's okay, it's ready to accept. So let me just get a little more blood on here. If you don't have enough, you're going to get an error reading, and then you've just wasted a whole strip. So Ron, put your finger up there. Show them if you can see the droplet. Okay, now we are ready to test. Also, if you wait too long, you hear the beep, that means it's reading it. It takes about 5 seconds for the glucose reading. If you wait too long, the meter is going to turn off by itself. So also be aware of that, because I've finally gotten the blood droplet big enough, and then the meter turned off and it was too late. So we lost a strip on there. So Ron's blood sugar right now is at 70. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
What did you have today? What did you eat today?
So this morning for breakfast I had 2 eggs over easy. I had avocado and sausage.
And then you also had a snack this afternoon?
Snack this afternoon, which was some
Did you have granola?
Yeah, some granola.
So the granola is the grain-free granola. That's basically nuts. That's also in the handout. That's kind of our, we don't have lunch because we're really not hungry for lunch, but some nuts or a little snack like that, granola is really good. So now we're going to do the ketone test strip. So I just wiped off Ron's finger. Let me see if I can get any more blood out of it, if it'll be enough. No, I'm going to actually do another one. Sometimes I can get 2 out of 1, but not this time. So
now, what was the best that I've done for ketones? It was a half a ketone, I believe.
Half a ketone.
I was eating too much protein. That's from my athletic days, that I always thought you had to eat so much protein to gain and keep muscle.
Yeah, that is a common mistake on keto, is that you can eat too much protein, and too much protein will get converted into glucose. So Ron's ketones are at 2.1.
Wow.
That's the highest that we've ever read it before. So
You sure that's really me?
I know. Usually that's like my numbers. So
I am shocked.
good job, honey. Good job.
I am shocked.
So now I'll test mine.
That's hard for me to believe. 2.1 kilos. I'm shocked.
Ron is in disbelief right now.
I've been watching myself and what I'm eating more, been more disciplined, because I want it to work. I don't want to just go halfway.
Yeah.
I want to actually be burning fat and not glucose.
I'm going to show you how to change the lancet strip. So all you do is twist off the top. Then there's a little cap on the new one. There's one inside here, but this is the new clean lancet strip. I'm just going to open it up and pull off this one, the old one, using the very end of it, and it just kind of twists and pops off. There we go. So now that's garbage, and then I can just depress this into here. The new one, ta-da! And there we go. Turn the top back on and we're ready. I have only had bacon and butter today. That was it. So I do expect my glucose to be very low, and I expect my ketones to be very high. Let's see what they are. I am hungry right now, but I'm also not famished. I don't feel like that hunger, that feeling that you get when you're used to burning sugar and burning carbohydrates, and your blood sugar drops and then you have to eat something. That would be a normal case scenario if you have really low blood sugar, like 70 or lower. So I've got a nice droplet of blood. I'm going to test my glucose right now. Let's see. 48.
Wow.
So 48, that's pretty low. That would be, most people would be very, very famished at that point. And like I said, although I'm hungry, I still have energy and I still feel good. I could go without eating, but I am going to eat something after this. I purposely extended and didn't eat because I wanted to show you guys some other numbers. Okay, got the ketone strip in. I've got my blood droplet, and I didn't need to poke myself again. I was able to, let me get a little bit more. There we go. With the ketone strip, you do need just a little bit more blood on there, so just for good measure. 5.2.
Wow.
5.2. So those are really good numbers. So that's basically how you test for your glucose and your ketones. We have the 30-30 count ketone and glucose test strips with that link included on the handouts page. Also the One Touch Delica Lancing device and the Precision Extra meter that tests for both your glucose and your ketones. Some meters only test one or the other. And I find that this meter is the most cost effective, and it's also very accurate. There's other professionals out there who recommend this device for testing ketones and glucose. We've been very happy with it. For those glucose levels that we just tested, and for your own testing, the ranges that you're going to usually hear about are your standard glucose ranges. They recommend typically the standard range being a fasting glucose level of 99 or less. And then you can test again about 2 hours after a meal and see how that meal has affected your glucose. And at that point, your glucose level should be about 140 or less. However, there's this other range that I like to go by, and those are functional ranges, because standard is kind of like normal, and normal is not always healthy. So I always look at the functional ranges in blood tests. And in this case, the functional ranges you're going to want to look for glucose, your fasting glucose should be 86 or less. 2 hours after a meal, if you test your glucose then, it should be 120 or less. Your glucose still should not be up above 120. Otherwise, that means that you ate a bag of sugar or some really refined carbohydrates, or your insulin response is not working properly. Okay, so there's a lot of factors that could be at play, but you want to look at functional ranges, so keep those in mind. Now when we're talking about ketone levels, when we're testing the blood ketones, your functional ranges are going to be 0 to 0.4, you're not in ketosis. You might have some ketones floating around. We do that normally. We have ketones. But it's not being used as your main fuel source if it's only 0.4 or less. To test for nutritional ketosis, it should be 0.5 to 3.0. That will mean that you're actually burning ketones, and as I'm going to show you in just a minute, as long as your glucose levels are low enough. And then if it's at 3.1 or above, like as is the case for me, that means I'm in deep ketosis. So I am. My body right now is burning fat for fuel. And I feel like that. You have like this heightened sense of awareness, you have focus, you feel really good, and that's the state I'm in right now. How do you feel right now?
I feel good.
All right.
I feel good.
The glucose ketone index. You can find this and more information if you go to perfectketo.com, glucose-ketone-index-calculator. You can just type in the numbers and do it right online, or you can just easily get out a calculator. So what you would want to do to find out your index is to take your glucose number. So for Ron's case, you're going to take the number 70 and you divide that by 18. That gives us 3.88888. And now we need to divide that by how many ketones Ron had. So take that number and divide it by 2.1. That was his ketone level. So his ketone glucose index is 1.85. And according to our chart here, if you are less than 3, that is a high level of ketosis. So good job. That means that his glucose levels are low enough and his ketone levels are high enough that he actually is in ketosis. A couple days ago when we did this number, I was in a moderate level. I was not in deep ketosis. I think I was a 7 something. And even though I had high ketones, my ketone levels were 1.5. My glucose levels were still too high. They were in, I think about the 80s or something. And that means that you're still not using the ketones for fuel. Even though they're there, you have too much glucose and you're still using the glucose. So this is important because you might test for ketones and not be in ketosis. And I could feel the difference because I did not feel like I do right now. And I knew the difference. So I was surprised when I saw 1.5 ketones because I was thinking, wow, I really don't feel like I'm in ketosis. And lo and behold, I was not. But if you're above 9, if you take your index and you're above 9, then you're not in ketosis. And if you're less than 3, then you are in a high level of ketosis. So mine is definitely less than 3 with these numbers that I have here. So I'm not going to do mine as an example, right? So the GKI example, take your glucose, divide it by 18, and then take that number and divide it by the amount of ketones that you have. That will give you your glucose ketone index. As an example, this was my numbers the other day. So my blood sugar was 91. I divided it by 18. This was your numbers the other day. Then it was 5.5. You divide that by his ketone levels were 0.7, and that was 7.22. So not in a deep level of ketosis.
That's when I was eating those hamburgers and drinking the beers.
Oh yeah, right. That's a low level of ketosis, and you can feel the difference. It doesn't feel. You have steady energy. You don't really have deep cravings, but you just don't feel like this a lot of energy and a lot of focus. So then as another example, a blood sugar level of 74, if you take that and you divide it by 18, you're going to get 4.111. You divide that by 1.5 ketones, and you can get 2.74, and that's a moderate level of ketosis according to our chart. Again, go to perfectketo.com and you can read out more about this.
2.74 would be a high level.
Oh, you're on top of it.
I pay attention.
Maybe I'm not as focused as I thought I was.
You're just not an appraiser. You don't look at numbers all day like I do.
That's true. So let's say you don't want to do the testing. Initially, I didn't. It was very expensive just a couple years ago, and so I said, you know what? I'm not going to buy the meter and pay $2 every time to just test. So I'm just going to try keto without testing. And I could really feel when I was in ketosis. And there are ways to do it. So if you have all day energy, if you have mental clarity, no hunger pains, if you're not having any bloating or water retention, that's something that I really notice on keto is you lose water weight right away. Do you notice that?
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
You might get the keto flu symptoms initially, and that's that feeling like you don't feel good, you start to have a headache, you kind of feel hungry, but you're not. You feel maybe a little nauseous as well. But if you have some electrolytes, it disappears.
That's what we had just today. We typically have a glass of water with electrolytes added to it during the day.
Yes, at least once, sometimes twice. And I remember when I first started out keto, sometimes it would be like 3 times before, okay, now I feel good again. You do sometimes need a lot more than you actually think. So keep adding those electrolytes if you're feeling better as you're adding them in, but maybe not all the way there yet. Add some more until you feel good again. You're also going to be thirsty. We already are used to drinking a lot of water, but you're going to be even more have even more thirst when you're doing keto because you are losing that excess water. Every gram of carbohydrates retains 4 grams of water. So as you're burning off this excess carbohydrates, this excess glucose that's hanging on to water, you're also losing that water with it. So just keep that in mind, but that's also a symptom or a sign that you are going into ketosis, or you're in ketosis. Bad breath can happen. Now that is the acetone, and this does go away. For most people, you do get used to it. We also have mints, those xylitol sweetened mints that are keto friendly. Those are helpful as well. And then you could also easily fast for 12 or more hours. So let's say you stop eating dinner at 6, or you stop eating at 7, and you could go for another 12 hours until 7 a.m. the next day, and you're not craving foods. You could possibly go longer. Once you really get into ketosis, some people even forget to eat.
So we typically don't eat after 6 o'clock. We don't typically eat breakfast before 9 anymore.
Yeah. You can play around with your fasting windows, and we're going to talk about fasting in our last video, but the reason why it's so easy on keto is because you're not looking for glucose for energy. You're using your fat stores. So that's why fasting becomes so popular with keto. Okay, so let's talk about the laboratory blood testing. Through your doctor, or ordered on your own. So Ron and I use Life Extensions to get our lab work done. We pay out of pocket for health insurance for most of our stuff anyways, so we're not relying on our doctor to write up these tests for us. You can order pretty much any test through Life Extensions. They have thyroid blood testing, they have cholesterol blood testing, hormones, cortisol. You can run the gamut with blood tests and saliva tests. That's what we use, and I'm going to show you in a minute my cholesterol tests. If you're concerned about your cholesterol levels being on keto, and we're going to talk about fats in our next video, but you're going to want to do an NMR lipoprofile, and that's going to test for the particle sizes. You also would want to look at your inflammation. So the C-reactive protein test, which is called a CRP test, that is one good indicator of inflammation. You would also want to get your A1C and your fasting insulin. That's going to give you a good idea of how your body is responding and has been responding to sugar.
A1C? What is that?
A1C tests for your hemoglobin that is attached to glucose, basically, and it tests for the last 3 months. It is a good...
Basil wants carbs.
It's a good indicator of testing for diabetes and testing for chronic high blood sugar, because your hemoglobin attaches to sugars and becomes basically stuck circulating throughout your blood. So after a 3-month period, that's a good time frame to test, because at that time your blood sugar would die off. Mm-hmm. So you have about a 3-month window, and you can say, wow, in the last 3 months, if you have a higher A1C, if you have a high A1C, that would indicate that you have been eating chronically, either too much glucose, or your insulin is not responding very well and not taking care of the glucose in your body. So then you can also test for your homocysteine levels. Homocysteine can be high in inflammatory states. It can also be high if you're not able to use vitamin B12 or vitamin B6, folate. If you're not able to use that, your homocysteine levels are going to be high. But this is a good indicator of inflammation and cardiovascular risk. Uric acid is another one that can be a concern for people. If you're not drinking enough water, if you're not maintaining hydration, you might have a buildup of uric acid. And also the erythrocyte sedimentation rate is another indicator of inflammation. Basically, they take your blood, they put it in a vial, and the rate that it falls down to the bottom of the vial is the ESR rate. Your blood is going to be heavier if it has a lot of inflammation on it, if it's damaged, and so it falls faster. So that's an interesting test. So let me show you my cholesterol levels. So I have 3 here. The first one from September of 2015. It's underlined here in the bright blue. My total cholesterol was 137. And now I can remember going to the doctor and she said, "Oh, great, your cholesterol level is perfect. You know, it's so low. That's a great number." And I was like, "Okay." But now I know that that's actually too low. Way too low. Then in November of 2016, I had it tested again. I was at 166. Okay, that's better. And you can see here my triglycerides were at 38, very low. So this is, I had, the healthy ratios.
Well, your triglycerides, the fat in your blood, was actually lower than when your cholesterol was lower. It's actually lower than when you're first reading for your cholesterol. So in other words, your cholesterol was higher, which was healthier.
Yes.
And your triglycerides,
were lower.
which you really should pay attention to, the fat in your blood actually was lower.
Yep. Yes, so the triglycerides in the first test, they were at 41, which is still low. Still, everything in there was fine, but overall, when you have too little of cholesterol, your hormones are going to be less as well because you need cholesterol to transport your hormones. So that can really affect your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, HGH, yes.
DHEA.
Good. You have been paying attention. So then let's fast forward to June of 2017 over here on the right. This was after 5 months on keto. My cholesterol did go up. I did write here in the left-hand column the prior cholesterol numbers that I had. My total cholesterol was 180, which is still perfect. I actually think 180 is perfect.
180 is better than the other two numbers.
I mean, 200 and 250 would even not be too high because I have a different view of cholesterol. We're going to talk about in a live video, though. My triglycerides, yes, they've gone up a little bit to 46, but still overall, my HDL was at 110 versus before it was at 102. And then the LDL, the low density and the very low density lipoprotein, it was at 61 versus 56. So in total, everything has gone up just a little bit, but the ratio is still the same. The total cholesterol to HDL ratio, this is what they look at for heart risk factors, heart disease factors, is still the same, and it's at 1.6, and that is still healthy. I would be more concerned with inflammatory markers, my C-reactive protein or my A1C or homocysteine levels, the amount of inflammation that's actually in the body, and the triglycerides. That would also be concerning.
The triglycerides would be most concerning to me. It's interesting that you raised your cholesterol, which we'll talk about that more, like Lacey said, which I believe is so important to have quality cholesterol levels. We'll get into what we think those are, what our studies have shown, right? But at the same time, you actually stayed, your triglycerides went up very nominally, and those numbers 38 and 46 are very low to begin with. So you've improved your cholesterol, which will improve your hormones in particular. So important.
Yes.
Extremely important.
Yes.
But your ratio remained the same.
Yep.
You just changed your numbers around, which are in essence really healthier than either of your prior 215 or 216 results.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I feel better. I actually feel better on keto and also having higher cholesterol. I can feel the difference in my brain. I know that sounds funny, but I think clearer, and you just have a better feeling about you.
Well, that's because your brain is made up of mostly fat, so you're eating more fat, so your brain's working better, right?
Yep.
We'll talk so much more about this, but we have so much Alzheimer's disease going on, which has been credited to a direct result of low-fat diets right?
Yeah, if you've ever been on a low-fat diet, you have probably felt the effects, and you start to feel a little crazy, forgetful, anxious, and you start losing your brain power. So that is that loss of fat that you do need. Your brain does need fat. To wrap it up, go join our Facebook group, Health for Business Success, if you're not already in it. And you're going to find all of the videos there. If you just search for the hashtag How to Keto, all 5 videos in this series are going to be posted there for you, including the handout.
Great.
We will see you guys in the next video.
Bye, guys.